When is the right time to sell a stock? How do you protect against inflation? Financial decisions can be tricky. Your cognitive and emotional biases can lead you astray. Financial Decoder, an original podcast from Charles Schwab, can help. Listen at schwab.com/financial decoder.
Calling all dog owners. Your furry friend deserves top-notch nourishment, and Ollie delivers the clean, fresh nutrition your dog needs in 5 flavors they'll absolutely flip over. Ollie is made in U.S. kitchens with ingredients carefully sourced from trusted growers and producers around the world, with absolutely no harmful fillers or preservatives. With protein-first recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes, fresh turkey with blueberries, or fresh lamb with cranberries, you might start thinking, dang, my dog eats better than I do. And that's probably true when it comes to Ollie. Give your pup a fresh start this new year by letting them taste test a personalized meal plan with Ollie. Head to ollie.com/Wondery. Tell them all about your dog and use code WONDERY to get 60% off your first box of meals when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer a clean bowl guarantee on the first box. So if you're not completely satisfied, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/Wondery and enter code WONDERY to get 60% off your first box. Start your dog's new year off right with Ollie. Start your dog's new year off right with Ollie.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Hey everyone, thanks for being a listener of the Silver Linings Handbook podcast and a member of our Patreon. In addition to helping shape the topics we cover and guests that we have on the show, we'd like to offer you an exclusive bonus. This is a Patreon-only exclusive bonus with Jason Usry. Jason is a longtime podcaster, the host of Santa May Be a Criminal, and now a new podcast that's coming out in September called Missing in a Moment. Missing in a Moment explores missing persons cases with empathy, kindness, and love that you don't always see in other spaces. Jason and I have also talked about starting our own podcast in the coming years. TBD on that one. I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode where we talk a little bit about taking responsibility, empathy, and vulnerability. So what's the difference between, in your mind, just like covering crime or crime shows and sort of true crime? I'm just thinking like, In Cold Blood, right? Truman Capote's book In Cold Blood, or Norman Mailer's The Executioner's Song as examples of something that's, certainly journalistic coverage of crime. But at the same time, you've got shows like Law and Order, and Law and Order, NBC just ordered up Law and Order True Crime. I'm not sure exactly what that means.
It's about podcasters.
It's about podcasters who start start murdering each other, one or the other.
Yeah, could be both.
Yeah. So for you, what's the difference? What is this thing that we're talking about? Are we even talking about the same thing?
No, I don't necessarily think it's the same. I mean, it's a really, really good question. And I think it's something we could talk about over the course of like a semester in college, there has been, and there continues to be really good content in the true crime genre that is factual, and it is forward moving in a specific case, or it is, really good at coverage of a case that's resolved. There's a bunch of that. There's also a bunch of sort of, like you're saying, the Law and Order types, which is sort of loosely rooted in, realism, but is sensationalized for, well,
You know that there are 2 Law and Order episodes about me. One in
oh,
which my father is the murderer, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Lord
oh my
knows
God.
I would be caught murdering someone a lot faster than he ever would. One and then in one where I'm the murderer, and it's very funny as the person who's the bad guy subject in those stories. And actually, one of the people that I supposedly killed was my ex-girlfriend. Um, but I don't know how she feels about it. I've never asked her how she felt about it. But certainly, as, as the person who was in there, I was actually quite entertained by it. Now that's my personality. I know other people who have had parts of their lives that have made it onto Law and Order who are a lot less entertained
Sure.
by the versions that came to them. But like, so for me personally, and I think this is the nature of my personality at play to some extent, like it gave me an opportunity to laugh at something that I didn't find particularly funny.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Well, I
Because I
mean, I
went
think,
into those wanting to hate those episodes, but
right, right.
yeah.
But you've done a good job of, in my opinion, everything that's happened to you, you've done an exceptional job of,
Happened to me.
well, sorry, the things you did.
You say that as if I was a leaf in the wind. You
Well,
mean the things I
you
did?
know what I
Yeah,
mean.
I do.
No, no, but the things you've experienced
Yeah.
and the way you have been able to really accept those things, hold yourself accountable for those things, and like you say, disconnect and laugh at those things is really, to me, extraordinary, because I know for me, if there's any little hiccup, like I have anxiety, I'm huddled in the corner, I'm sweating, my hair gets grayer like every minute. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the worst thing of all time. But like and I don't know, like, I mean, obviously this happened a long time ago. So like I'm sure it's been a process and probably continues to be a process for you to manage those
Mhm.
things, those emotions. But looking at you now and seeing the way that you handle that stuff and hearing that, I didn't even know I haven't watched Law and Order in 20 years. So I don't know. I haven't seen those episodes. Please send them to me. I will watch them
I
and
will.
I'll give you
I
my
will.
feedback. But having, not knowing that and hearing you talk about now, like this is how you sort of look at those things is interesting.
Well, there's a kind of gift, I think, right? Like through going through big public embarrassment, whatever your community was, mine just happened to be international, but going through big public embarrassment and things that you sort of wish never happened or were your great fears, like the beauty of it is you realize it all doesn't matter.
Right.
And you realize, like, particularly thinking of it from the perspective of a journalist, but it could be in any job. You could be an office manager, you could be an accountant, you could be a whatever. And you constantly read or see these stories about these people who do these horrible things, and you imagine to yourself, right? Like, I can't imagine what I would possibly do if that thing happened. And then you go through it and you go, you know what? I keep on trucking and I will come out better. And I think of some of the guests that I've had, everybody has a different reaction to loss, but some of the family members who have lost somebody, either because they died or they were missing. And, you know, I'm thinking of some in particular, like Brianna Maitland's father, Bruce Maitland,
Yeah.
Jennifer Keese's uncle, Bill Gilmore, or Nada Frank's father, Monty Frank. None of them would choose, just like me, or just like any of us who go through some kind of large loss, none of them would choose for that to happen
Right.
or choose to go through that. And I'm willing to bet, certainly some of them, if I had presented the question to them, could you have gone on if this had happened? They would have said no.
Right.
And I I think it has this unbelievably clarifying power. And those people, if you think of each of the ones I mentioned, they have missions
Right.
to prevent or to comfort others in their suffering or their loss.
Right.
And that their loss, right? Their loss essentially has allowed them to help other people through their suffering in ways, it's not analogous for me. Like I lost a job, ended up on a bunch of, whatever, front page TV,
Law and Order episodes.
Law and Order episodes. But if you think about it over the last 20, however many years, how many people have I sat in the room with who have opened up to me about their lives in a way that they wouldn't have otherwise because they didn't feel like they were going to be judged, right?
Yeah.
So not only do you learn that it doesn't matter, but it helps you connect with people more deeply.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think if that had not happened with you, if you were not the person that you were, you came to those conversations from that time with a certain vulnerability, right? And that broke down a barrier for the people you were talking to. It's the same. It's not the same. Like yours is way worse. I dress up like a goofy Santa Claus guy when I go to these conventions. And my reason of doing that is because nobody's afraid to talk to me because I'm the idiot. I set the conversation up as I'm the doofus. They can't feel like they're dumber than me because they're not the one dressed like an idiot. And so like it has caused so many opportunities for people to talk to me because I've taken the ego out of the equation. Like I don't care what people think about me because I'm dressed up like a buffoon.
So you become the guy everybody can talk to.
That's
Or
sort
the
of how I
person who
feel.
feels awkward, the person who feels anxious, the person who feels
And don't get me wrong, like before I put that suit on, I am that person. Like I get anxious to talk to. I go into a social situation. Like I don't know how to approach. Like I'm really good at talking to people one on one, but if I walk into a room of people and I'm supposed to try to figure out where I fit, I can't do it. But if I'm wearing the suit, I don't have to figure that out because one, people either come talk to me, or two, I feel like I can go and bust up anything because people will talk to me. And so it's just this weird sort of thing. It's like an act, but it's the part of me, it's the real part of me that I never knew I had until I put on the suit, which is so weird. It sounds like a superhero thing, but it's such a weird thing that it strips away my anxiety and my ego, even though I still get a little bit of it. It takes that away. And I think sort of in the same way my point was, that is me being vulnerable with other people because I'm willing to show that I'm okay being the one that looks ridiculous in the conversation. You coming to people after your event, you were clearly the one that had the big problem. Mm-hmm. And it probably broke down the walls of you being, this, New York Times reporter, like, what's this going to be about? This was like, this is somebody that is fallible and screwed up, mm-hmm. just like me. And I can talk to that person because I have the upper hand over him because I have not been, taken through the media and exposed the way that you were. And so I just think it's that sort of like, I think that's a really important thing because I think you actually get to more real conversations with people if they think they have the upper hand, and you're willing to relent that. You're willing to relinquish the upper hand and listen.
Or at the very least that you're not lording over them. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I think it's really, for most people, I think it's really about feeling as if they're on the same level as you. Yeah, you just got me thinking. So like I consider you sort of like the mayor of true crime. Like all of us, depending on our little whatevers, don't always get along, but like you get along with everybody. And you're like a bridge between everybody. On the other hand, to your point about vulnerability, right? And your vulnerability opens that door and opens those doors. My vulnerability allows me to talk to anyone. Like,
right.
You could absolutely hate me and we can sit down and have a conversation. I don't
really respect, by the way.
Yeah, I don't get too judgy. Like, people have definitely attacked me in this space, and I have swept in to defend them afterwards.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's really interesting to think about how those experiences and those things about us have made it very easy for people to kind of you to be a bridge and for people to just talk to me. So I'm going to ask you just this broader debate about ethics and true crime, kind of driven by a lot of victims' families. Um, you know, that this should be about advocacy. It's not about entertainment. They've attacked people who are journalists. Like, that has been a big piece of the attack, which is
Right.
kind of scares me. That's like anti-truth is always concerns me.
Ready to prioritize yourself in the new year? Your skin is a great place to start. Dime Beauty, founded by a master esthetician, is more than just a skincare company. With 4 skin-conscious categories, skincare, beauty, body care, and fragrance, Dime offers simple, spa-worthy products that will help you enter 2025 with confidence. Whether you're revitalizing your regimen with nourishing products or building one from scratch, Dime makes it easy. The Work System, our all-in-one best-selling routine, includes a cleanser of your choice, toner, serums, and moisturizers, taking the guesswork out of skincare for your healthiest, happiest skin yet. Dime's commitment to clean ingredients and sustainable packaging ensures every product is as gentle on your skin as it is on the planet. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews and a loyal community, the results speak for themselves. Revive your skin and give yourself the routine refresh you deserve by visiting dimebeautyco.com. That's dimebeautyco.com. Your best skin awaits.
Life can change in an instant. My brother-in-law died suddenly, leaving behind my sister and her 2 young kids. He didn't have life insurance, so now they're facing the unthinkable, leaving their home. After seeing what they went through, I immediately called SelectQuote to get life insurance for my family. In 15 minutes, a licensed insurance agent compared policies from highly rated carriers to find me the right coverage in my budget. I got a $500,000 policy for only $16 a month. Plus, I qualified for same-day life insurance. No medical exam was required, and I was covered by the time I hung up. Even if you have a health concern, SelectQuote agents can find you the right policy at the lowest price. And while you can't prepare emotionally for a loss, SelectQuote can give you peace of mind with life insurance. Don't wait until it's too late.
Go to SelectQuote.com to get your free quote today. That's SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote.com. Details on example rate at SelectQuote.com.
But do you think they're right about that element, that it must be advocacy or it will never be ethical?
No, I don't, because I think that the media it's consumed by consumers, right? It is enjoyed by people, and so most of what people enjoy is going to be entertainment. Now, do I think that there is an important place for advocacy and being ethical in this space? Absolutely, I do. Do I think that entertainers should be ethical in their approach to developing content and true crime? Absolutely, I do. I don't think it has to be an either or, and I don't think it should be an either or, because we talked yesterday, and I was saying how, like, if you're advocating for something, usually you have a very specific case you're advocating for, right? And there is once that case is done, then where do you go from there? You have to, I think that there has to be some sort of conviction in you that whatever your guiding principles are, and I think they should be, looking at things from an ethical standpoint, you should be trying to maintain voices for victims. I think you should be trying to do things that the family finds honorable, that is not hurting the families and not re-traumatizing the families. I think if you have all those things, you can still do those things and still be entertaining. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. So it's a tricky thing. And I know that, there are people that really, really want to only be advocates and people that only want to, be entertainers. And I think the happy medium is somewhere in the middle, which is where like the comedy thing comes. I think that comedy allows us to actually have really, really centered convictions and tell them in a way that's entertaining. And that's what I've tried to do with Santa Maybe Criminal is like, you know where my heart is in it, but you might laugh at the way I get around to it. You'll hear the things I'm saying that are sort of like the moralities of my show and my character, but they're sort of funny to get there. And those are the way that we tell stories to each other as friends. Those are not the way that we tell each other stories in the public discourse, because everybody wants to cancel everybody. Everybody's triggered about everything. We can't have honest conversations anymore because we are so scared to say what we actually think. When the truth of the matter is, go into Delphi, the only thing that matters is 2 little girls were murdered and they need justice and their families need to feel that for them and their memories need to be honored. And the rest of it is total BS. I'm trying not to get too hot about it.
Although I would dispute that in one way, and I completely agree with you that it is about the 2 little girls. That is super important. Their families getting justice is important. People having faith in the system is
I
also
agree.
important, right?
100%.
And that doesn't mean, and that actually will lead into another question that came from the chat a little while ago. But I do think what that looks like, right, can be really, really difficult to navigate. So Robert Palmer, a friend, is in the chat, and he said there's a balance between entertainment and being ethical. And Robert, I would love to hear more on how you think that can be balanced. I would love to see, just if you drop anything in the chat on that element of it. But Jason, what are your thoughts on like what is the right balance? How do you find the balance?
Well, I mean, I think you find the balance by just that's a really good question. I mean, I think for me it's a gut thing. Like I don't think that if we go back to Delphi, because that's the one that's in the public discourse right now, making sure that we're honoring the girls, like you said, like there are 2 sides to this: honoring the girls and the families, right, and then ensuring that the system works properly. Those are the 2 most important things. That's really the only 2 things that matter in the case, is the making sure that there's justice served for the murders of 2 little girls, and that the system works properly, and that we uphold the faith in the system. My issue with all of that is that so many people are eroding the trust in both of those
things at the same time. Yeah,
exactly. And that's really troubling, because I believe in both of those things independently.
But they have a synergy to them, right? Like ideally, justice for the families and for the victims would come through the system that we trust. But I think what's undermining both of those things, not just in this case, but other cases too, like you can see the University of Idaho case of the 4 college students who were killed. You can see the case in Massachusetts with the woman, Karen O'Keefe, who ran over, or is alleged to have, is charged with running over a police officer. I think John O'Keefe was his name. Karen Reed. The undermining of the system itself is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like if we're going back to Jim Crow, or we're going back to, wrongful convictions and other things like that. But I feel like we've moved into an environment where on every case, every big case, someone's always going to find some thread. And so the fact that creators are finding those threads where they don't really exist makes me feel that the whole purpose of finding those threads is to entertain their audience, to keep their audience growing. And so essentially they're undermining the system for their own success, which kind of pulls me into 2 comments. one that Mike made and one that Sophie made. And Sophie made the point, we were talking about the puzzle solving part, except for when people try to puzzle solve with people's lives when they don't need to, or when they aren't asked to. And then Mike made the point that especially when they want to make a puzzle where there's no puzzle. So it all, that got me thinking, both their comments got me thinking, like, why I understand why we as humans make mysteries out of things that don't really exist. Like, it's just, we need to create narrative. We need to create understanding. We like to entertain ourselves. But why do you think creators do? That was the question I was asking myself. Well, like, it's going to draw more eyeballs. It's going to draw more ears and more listens. So in an industry where the incentive is driven like that, what can anyone do? I understand the advocate's frustration. I understand the frustration of those people. So how do you balance that out?
Well, I mean, when you talked about Jim Crow and the previous issues, those were handled by people who were professionals in the space. Now we're in a world where, like, literally the entire world thinks they're experts on every topic. And so long as they care about the topic, or so long as they follow the hashtag, or so long as they follow a creator, they get a voice in the equation. And, as someone who creates things and who does encourage audience participation, I can understand the draw of that. The problem is with these cases that are super, super serious and super emotional, what happens is that you've got, and we keep talking about Delphi, but that's the thing that's the most divisive right now, is that you've got two different camps of people, and both of them are sort of at war, when I think everybody wants the same thing, but nobody's willing to talk to the other one about how to actually get to that thing. They just want to hate on each other and be mad at each other. And instead, like, we sit here and we spin and we get frothed up about this stuff, when the fact of the matter is, if we actually just sat back, took stock, took a breath, I think we could all calm down. And it's I don't know, man. Like,
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure we all want the same thing.
Well, maybe we don't. I think we all should want the same thing. I think it's very clear what we should want in any.
Well, it's really interesting. So
person.
A lot of the psychological research, it's really fascinating. So, we always talk about sociopaths as killers, but what fields attract psychopaths, functional psychopaths? Media, right? Like the news media, entertainment, and law.
Wow.
So I'm not entirely sure we all want the same thing. But
there are two of them on this call.
But right, exactly. But by that I mean, like, if you care more about recognition, if you care more about money, if you care, you can wrap yourself in all those words, right? Like victims' families. You can wrap yourself in the words of justice. Sure. You can wrap, but really the reason why you're there is because you want recognition, or you want power, or you want money, or whatever it is. Now, Robert made the point, it can only be balanced by the hosts, right? That the ethics and the entertainment piece of it. But really, doesn't that just mean that only the listeners can balance it? Because if you don't punish people for being unethical, if you actually reward them for being unethical.
Well, I think, I mean, I think the responsibility starts with the host, presenter, personality, whatever you want to call them. They have to set the tone because if you're popular enough, you're going to have people emulate what you do. It's like a parent with children. If you don't want your children to act a certain way, then don't show them how to act that way. And I think a lot of listeners emulate the hosts and the creators that they admire because they love them. And if the host or whatever changes the behavior, you have an opportunity to rehabilitate the audience and rehabilitate the conversation in a way that is reconciliatory. Unfortunately, like I was getting a little, on edge about it, and you know how passionate I am about this. I think that the conversation in some cases has gotten really out of hand, and that on every side, people need to take a breath and recenter the conversation. It doesn't have to be on the same, to your point, like maybe we don't all want the same things. It doesn't have to be on the same thing. It has to be on a thing that's centered to the values that you have. So it either needs to be on, the victim advocacy side, or needs to be on the system advocacy side, and not, the hijinks of what we've experienced over
So
the
you
course.
You got me thinking about something. So maybe it's not really about like advocacy for the victims per se, or for the justice system, or for whatever it is, that whatever mode you're in, whether you're an advocate, a journalist, or pick your an entertainment, or some combination of all of the different types we've been talking about, that it's really about being like reasonable, responsible. And that it doesn't really matter whether you're making a true crime satire podcast, or you are making Dateline, or you are making the making of a murder documentary, or pick whatever it is, that it's about being responsible.
Right.
Yeah. Mike makes a point in the chat that the biggest problem with true crime is we can't get the answers we want because of the consequences of getting the answer.
I think it's a great point.
I mean, for example, we want to know who killed John Bonet, but that person doesn't want to go to prison. That's just one, I think, example of the way that this plays out. It reminds me of this conversation I was having this week, going back to your point about Delphi, where one of my antagonists, I will say, who I'm relatively friendly with, made the point, like, we all believe in justice for Abby and Libby. And I quote tweeted him and said, except for the person who killed them. And then we went back and forth, and I was like, oh yeah, and that person's family members, and their lawyers, and their fill in the blank. Like, we use these same words, but we don't really mean the same thing to some extent. Right. So if I'm a defense attorney, for example, like, my job is not justice for the victims. Like, I can spout that justice for the victims and my client are the same thing, but it's not really that, right? So, but if I'm responsible and you're responsible, I think then we can have a conversation, because we're dealing with the same sets of facts. We're dealing with the truth. Like, we're acknowledging what our real motive is.
Right. And yeah, and I mean, that's all well and good. But the other thing too is, you and I aren't brokering in a courtroom. We're on social media, and the vast majority of these people are on social media. And the arguments that are being made are by people who, at the end of the day, if the system works, that will be sorted out in a courtroom, and there will be 12 jurors, and there will be, either a conviction or an acquittal. I've made no bones about what my feelings are on it. I won't share them now, but and both. And that the girls will get justice. But like the thing that's sort of just wild about this, and then Idaho's coming next, and it happened with Murdoch too. Like the conversation around these cases has become so toxic, because there's a very pro defense side, and there's a very pro prosecution side. And I don't know how much of either side are actually looking at the cases. I wonder sometimes if there is just, I'm a defense person and I'm a prosecution person, and I'm unwilling to look at the facts. I just know I'm this person. Like, I might be wrong about that, but it feels like sometimes there is that sort of tenor, because the same people pop up on either side all the time. And I think, going back to the vulnerability thing, if we could all actually just admit when we're wrong, like, I can totally think I could totally start at a case and think somebody's guilty.
But Jason, I'm never wrong.
maybe you're not. I'm totally willing to admit when I'm wrong. I'm wrong all the time. But
same here.
I think I know you are. I definitely know you are. But like I think that if
more often than I'm right.
Right. But if we all actually had if we all felt like we could actually say we're wrong without it bruising our ego, without people thinking less of us. I mean, I think it's an amazing show of strength when someone can come to me and say, you know what, I messed up. I'm wrong. That to me is like the highest, like, it's the most admirable thing in the world to me.
Courage.
If someone can,
Courage.
it is absolutely courage. And like, there's like, if we could come to that.
Well, I talk about this all the time. Like, I don't know. I was talking to someone, what was it, a couple days ago, and we were in a group conversation, and this person adamantly disagreed with me on a point. And so then I got a message outside of the group conversation that was, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be snippy with you. And I was like, no, I love it when people adamantly disagree with me. I love it when people, as many of the people in the chat will tell you, I love it when people call me out. Well, because it gives me an opportunity to grow, right? And it gives me an opportunity to change. But it seems what we're really talking about, like these different camps that you're talking about, seems very reflective of our modern politics too.
Yeah.
And our modern discourse right now, that some of these things like social media and some of these things are pulling us away from each other and having a sense of community, and that we're isolating into like, one of the beauties of social media is that I can go find a bunch of freaks just like me, because I'm a total freak. It takes going global to find a group of people who are like me, and we share a common interest, right? And that is a great thing about social media. But it also means that I'm not talking to my neighbor as much, who's completely different and has a completely different lens and worldview. And I'm able to live in this space where I feel a sense of belonging, which is a good thing, right? But at the same time, I'm not talking to people who have different perspectives. So I think maybe in inviting that feedback and encouraging it, like I always say I love my 1-star reviews, because usually they have some good critiques and ideas in them. Usually.
Well, I think all that's a good point. And like, talking about the different sides, I mean, the people on either side get in their own echo chambers, and it just, creates an additional sort of, I don't know, it creates an additional shield around them or whatever, so they can say whatever they want on their side, and they're unwilling to listen to the other side. The other thing I would say is talking about like that community thing, like, part of the focus of my show is bringing opposing viewpoints together in a common place where they're not talking about their opposing viewpoints. So my show I have characters in my show on all different sides from all different places, and it brings everybody together, and, hopefully in a fun way, I think in a way that's very effective for each of their individual strengths. And it like lets people see, like, this person's fun, this person's funny, and like, it takes all of that, it strips all of that BS off of what they might think of the person. And sometimes I get flack for that because I had them on the show. But you know what? It's my show. And if you don't want to listen, you don't have to listen to my show. These are people that I want on my show. And I make the decision whether or not I'm going to have them on my show.
I must be rubbing off on you.
Well, you have, pretty much. I don't care anymore. Yeah. Tear it all down. Burn it all down.
Yep. I'm not exactly burn it all down, but I'm like, if I have one listener and that listener's me and I'm getting something good out of it, then great.
I always produce for an audience of one.
Yes, right. I'm Jason Blair, and this is a Silver Linings Handbook Patreon only bonus episode. We'll see you all again soon.